think we are live. Hey everyone, good afternoon. Figured hop on real quick. So last week I did a live. I came on live and I was talking about the different types of customers, that you will have, and how to interact with these different types of customers. So if you missed last, did I go live? Wednesday, I believe, whenever it was, the last live that I did, I talked about the three types of ideal clients and customers you'll ever have in your business. So we discussed the informed, the afflicted, and the oblivious. So the informed is the person who naturally, they're informed, they know exactly what their challenge is, what their pain points are. They've navigated the process of actively looking for solutions and looking for opportunities to remedy that problem that they're experiencing. Someone who is afflicted, on the other hand, is someone who, they're symptom aware, right? They know that something's off. They only have enough language and understanding of how to utilize the symptom as the solution, right? So they're thinking, okay, this is the symptom, I'm going to look for a remedy for this symptom, but without actually understanding what the actual problem at hand is. And then there's a person who's oblivious. This person is like, okay, they're barely symptom aware, but they're like, okay, I know something's wrong, I can't quite put my finger on it, but they don't have enough language and information and awareness. Partly this information is because of a lack of awareness on the problem that they're experiencing, right? So a lot of times when I have conversations with business owners, with founders, they mention, oh, they're totally focused on serving the person who's informed. And granted, I think that there's a time and place for that. And of course, a lot of people think that, okay, I'm just only going to focus on the people who I know want what it is that I have to offer, right? And that's fair, that's true. A lot of times it's much easier to convert that person because that person's actively looking for a solution to said problem that they're experiencing, right? So with that being said, yes, you're going to have a lot of content information and touch points that speak directly to the person who is informed. But then there's the person who is afflicted and the person who is oblivious. And the person who is oblivious, like the oblivious segment of the market, is the biggest underserved segment of the market, the person who's oblivious. So because they're oblivious, a lot of times people don't spend the time or energy to educate, to communicate to these people. And what tends to happen is that they miss out on this opportunity, right? And when you're building your sales funnel, you want to look at it as a cycle and not necessarily like a linear process, right? So it's not necessarily like that you're going to attract a very specific group of people and then you're going to move them on this very linear path, because life is not linear in and of itself, right? Decisions are not made on a linear projection. So like if you're still operating in that sales funnel that follows this very linear projection, you're missing out on a lot of opportunities to create a deeper connection. And this connection is really rooted in trust. So with that being said, when it comes on to actually making sales, and if that's something that you're committed to, of course, I hope that that is something that you're committed to for 2026 and beyond, is to go back to the drawing board, right? Go back to the drawing board and look at what's happening, right? Like what's happening with your stats right now. And then think about how it is that you're going to create deeper connections. And these deeper connections are going to be rooted in trust, but based off of where it is that person is along on their buying journey. So understanding the customer journey, but also looking at touch points that make sense for that person, whether they're informed, they're afflicted, or they're oblivious. Because a lot of times people will, people reach out to me and say, okay, can you do an audit for me on my sales funnel? And I look at the sales funnel, and one of the first things that I notice is that they're treating every person that comes into their ecosystem, into their email list, to their text message list, to, you know, people that just enter into their database, however it is that they manage it, they treat all of those people the same. And if you treat all those people the same and say things that don't make sense to that person, then there's going to be a disconnect. And if there's a disconnect, people are going to pull away. So you want to ensure that the content and the information that you're sharing is based off of where it is that people are, right? And it's really rooted in understanding who they are, what's their logic, and what's their emotion. So one of the things, let me just pull out my notes so that I don't forget this, this very specific thing I wanted to address. The logic emotion sequence, right? And this is what happens when you don't understand the buyer journey. And if you don't understand the buyer journey, then what's going to happen is that you're going to focus a lot on the logic and not the emotion, and those two things go hand in hand. So let me give you an example. So every buyer, even the informed person, goes through both logic and emotion, and in that order. So both logic, remember logic first, and then emotion. So just think of it as like LE, right? Like I like to create ways in which it makes it easier for me to remember things. So LE, so the logic and the emotion. So the first is the logic. The logic is saying, does this solve my problem? The emotion is, but will it work for me? So where you're losing them is that you're answering emotion more with logic. And if you're answering emotion more with logic, people don't feel seen and they don't feel understood. And if they don't feel understood, or they don't feel like there's an alignment in what you're saying and what it is that they want, or what they perceive to what it is that they want, there's going to be a disconnect, right? So there has to be this logic and there has to be this emotion. And I'll give you an example. So the buyer asks, you know, someone reaches out to you and they ask you, well, here's the thing. They may not even necessarily be asking you this question, but they may be asking themselves this question. What if I can't figure this out? And your answer is like, or, you know, like maybe you have a really good FAQs, but they're thinking in their mind, like, what if I can't figure this out? And your answer in like your sales copy, or even just in your frequently asked questions, says something along the lines of, well, we have 17 training models and a 200-page manual. Like right off the bat, you're going to overwhelm people. And all they think is, okay, this is complicated, and this is not going to work for me, right? So what you need to ensure you do is you break it down in very tangible steps and things that the brain automatically, when they hear it, they're like, okay, this makes sense. And you say something along the lines of like, in day 1, you'll have your first campaign live, and I'll walk you through it in a 15-minute call, right? So it's like, okay, you're setting a standard, but you're also setting a result, an actionable result that they want. And you're putting a time frame on it as well. So you're saying in a 15-minute call, a 30-minute call, a 40-minute call, whatever the case is. So when you do this, what you're doing is you're answering the emotion more with, you're answering more with the emotion. You're answering the emotion, but you're putting some logic behind that framework as well. Another thing you want to do, or you want to avoid rather, is at the last 10% of your sales page, you need to ensure that it answers everything. Remember that at this point the buyer is ready. They have a credit card on hand, or you know, like they have it stored to their computer or to their device, whatever it is that they're using, and their brain whispers to them, what if I'm the exception? What if my situation is different? Like based off of what, you know, everyone, here's the thing. Everyone thinks that they're special, and granted, we all are special in our own ways, right? But a lot of times people will overcomplicate things to make themselves feel better about navigating this thing. Sometimes people overcomplicate it as an excuse and a crutch as to why they haven't actively taken any real approach to getting that result to the problem that they're experiencing, right? So with that being said, if they're thinking, okay, what if I'm the exception? What if my situation is different? Or I've had questions where someone was saying, for instance, for my core offering is where I work with my client one-on-one and we build out their sales funnel together. So I'm doing a lot of the heavy lifting. I'm creating the strategy, but I'm doing a lot of the back end implementation for them, so it's kind of like done with you services. So in that particular offer, that's called sales funnel that converts. That offer is geared towards people who are either have created a sales funnel before, and it's quite basic, or so these are the two type of people, or they're like, okay, I have this idea, I've been able to monetize it, I've had a few clients, but I need to create some structure and framework around how it is that I'm going to intentionally market my business and have touch points that make sense for me to be able to grow this and scale this. So they're literally building the infrastructure of the sales funnel from scratch. So it's either those two people, right? So someone will say something like, well, I feel like I know I need a sales funnel. I've been able to hustle my way to making $50,000 in sales in 7 months, or whatever the case is, right? So like, do you think that I actually need a funnel? Do you think that, like, based off of that, I need to implement the sales funnel? It's like, yeah, you do, right? Like, the whole point of building it is so that you can grow, you can create those touch points, you can scale ultimately, right? But I mean, you need to be able to have some continuum before you're able to scale. So a lot of people think like, yeah, I want to scale my business, but you need to have a baseline, right? And you have to have a baseline, one, anchored on consistency. So consistency of leads coming in, also consistency of cash flow coming in as well, and other things, right? So you need to ensure that you have the systems to support this. So I said all of this to say that that person's like, okay, well, will this work for me, right? And they're possibly thinking that they're different. But what you need to do is at the last 10% of your sales page, and I promise you, if you do this, so go to any of your sales pages that you have right now and ensure that the last 10% you have proof that you can help someone like them in the last, let's say, like 100 words before the checkout. If you don't do that, they're just going to close a tab and they're going to forget about you, right? So you want to go ahead and add that one, like, customer review, that testimonial, that case study of that particular customer that you worked with. And that is going to remove the exact doubt that that person who thinks that they're special really has, right? And is going to satisfy them, right? Some people are not going to act right away. Some people are like, okay, you know what? This sounds about right. Okay, this is for me. And then they're going to go ahead and say, okay, that's fine. And they'll go ahead and purchase. So ultimately, you want to understand that there's a logic and there's an emotion. And regardless of whether they're informed, they're afflicted, or they're oblivious, you need to understand this logic and emotion framework and this paradigm, right? And how they work hand in hand so that you can focus, of course, on creating more sales and continuum, right? So it's not just about selling once. It's about selling multiple times and ensuring that you are creating an atmosphere, right, and an ecosystem in your sales funnel to consistently convert leads into paying clients and customers over and over. And of course, continue to provide value and provide education that makes sense for that person. So it's not just about like throwing a whole bunch of content out there to people and hoping that something sticks. It's being very intentional about the kind of information that you share based off where it is that that person is on their buying journey. So with that being said, I'm going to get into a lot more details about this on Thursday. I mentioned last week, I'm hosting a live training a live working session on those who want to really create more consistent cash flow with their sales funnel. You are going to have an opportunity for me to see, come with your questions, and I'll be able to answer questions around your sales funnel, look at some of the things that's working for you, and see where there's maybe opportunities to tighten up some things there, but also what direction you should go as well in terms of what growth and scalability looks like. So I'm going to go ahead and pop the link if you're interested in joining. If you want to go ahead and take a look at it, I'll go ahead and put the link here. Let me just pop it here. All right. So I went ahead and posted that. And if you have any questions about this training, what it pertains, you know, if you're thinking about something very specific around your sales funnel, you want to know whether or not we're covering that, definitely comment down below and let me know. And I will see you soon. Bye, everyone.